Hello and welcome to the Hispanic Patriot podcast, a weekly podcast broadcast live from a secret, undisclosed location here in the heart of the great state of Colorado. Here we speak the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help us God. My name is Nickolas Razo, and without further ado, I would present to you all our fearless patron Hugo Chavez Rey, but he right now is unavailable. We might see him later in the show, but we must truck on as always. And so today, I was not aware that I'd be doing this by myself right now, and I think it gives us a great opportunity, kind of a fireside chat kind of vibe is what I think we're going to be giving off tonight as we do things a little bit different, a little more off the cuff, but still we have a great show for you guys tonight. And of course, Happy New Year, Prospero Año. It is now 2026, the year that we hope to take our country back even further by winning more seats in the House and Senate as Republicans, but also as Coloradans. We hope to have a more fair, more bold, and more youthful perspective to our government under that Golden Dome this year. But more on that in the future. You know you won't want to miss it. Guys, we are very relaxed here right now. We are very positive for this new year because, honestly, I think a lot of us felt just ready to get out of the last one. I can't really explain that vibe, but I think that definitely, especially among America's working class, this is something that we really felt this year. For a lot of reasons, consumer shopping was down. It is percentage-wise up, but when you factor in the rise in the cost of what is being bought, that those numbers are not huge. That percentage might be large, but the volume of goods moved is not. This means a lot of potential bad things this year economically. I'm sorry to go straight into this really negative space, but I feel like a lot of us have not really had the best holidays. A lot of our friends, a lot of our family, there was something very bitter in the air this year, and I think all of us are ready to get out of it, ready to again truck forward and make 2026 a new year because there's a lot more opportunity. 2025 kind of felt like a dead year to a lot of people, especially a lot of young people who were kind of waiting for things to get better at the same pace as we saw 8 years ago. But we will be talking about that and a lot more for you guys tonight. And like I said, we got kind of a fireside chat. Maybe we got a little possible fireplace fire going over there, whatever it is, the lighting. We have a very, very chill, relaxed environment because we here at Hispanic Patriot Podcast are all about making sure you guys have the truth and nothing but the truth, but also that you're not discouraged because, and we're going to get into this later, the discouragement of young people on the right has been a major problem, I think, in the aftermath of so many tragedies, in the aftermath of so many things this year. And I think a lot of us, at least those I see, because I don't feel this way, a lot of people feel on the defensive. And we're going to be talking about that with all of you tonight. So, first of all, let's get into a little bit of requests because we have a couple of them here. We wanted to let you guys know that there is going to be an event in Saturday at 4 p.m. at the May. You can find more information about that in the description. I think that's what that's called. And basically, it's a rooftop spot. It's a very popular spot for local Republican events. You guys probably know it if you see it in the description. So that's gonna be fun. But also, we have a lot of cool projects coming up that we can't wait to announce. Really, we're going to go into high gear this year. I really want to stress that we are going into high gear this year. And that is why we thank all of you and want to ask all of you at this time to please hit the like button, subscribe to us, and make sure you don't miss anything, especially the shorts we have, which will be more numerous in the future now. So let's get into the local news because we have a huge local story that is breaking. We're going to kind of intersperse the news with some positive things and some musings. But for right now, we want to talk about what a lot of Coloradans are talking about right now, which is apparently Trump wants all of us to dehydrate. Yes, that is the word on the street, and very satirically so. But all joking aside, that is what the media is presenting. So let's talk. Let's see what I'm talking about here. We can give context to this a little bit.
President Trump promised retaliation against Colorado for keeping Tina Peters in prison on her election system tampering conviction. And he is following through again. Thanks for being with us. I'm Kim Christensen.
And I'm Kyle Clark. President Trump threatened
that person. I can't
measures
press enough real quick that Kyle Clark is an awful person whose bodyguard killed somebody, from what we understand. Like that's kind of a roundabout way to say that, but that's essentially what happened. So these people are literal murderers. That usually isn't the case for journalism, but here we go.
And today we learned the president has vetoed a bill to fund a major drinking water project here. It is the first veto of his second term. This pipeline project passed through Congress unanimously. The Arkansas Valley Conduit was first promised by President John F. Kennedy. It's supposed to bring clean drinking water to dozens of communities on the eastern plains between Pueblo and Lamar, areas where the well water is often salty and deep wells can draw up radiation. Construction finally started on this long-awaited project a few years ago, but costs doubled due to inflation and labor expenses. President Trump says he is vetoing that funding to save taxpayers money.
And 9 News reporter Spencer Schweitzer is joining us. Spencer, bipartisan, unanimous vote in Congress, bipartisan support in Colorado, and the project's in the reddest Republican district in Colorado, represented by Congresswoman Lauren Boebert.
Yeah, Rep. Boebert argued this is a non-controversial bill.
This guy looks like Igor. I'm sorry, but like I can't hold it in. Like that's just what I'm getting here.
And her for
like
when
Igor
she
with
stood up to the Trump administration
haircut
to force the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files.
Access to clean water should be fundamental for us.
Every member of Congress signed off on funding the Arkansas
What was the
Valley
point of wasting that water for that shot? You gotta wonder.
Pipeline providing clean drinking water.
That's the kind of thing you should do with AI.
To Lamar.
It appears that nothing is safe.
President Trump vetoed the bill, sponsored in the House by one of his most loyal supporters, Republican Rep. Lauren Boebert.
I think it's very unfortunate that President Trump chose a bill that provides clean water to 50,000 Southeast Coloradans to veto.
But the president threatened punishment for Colorado if it wouldn't release convicted election clerk Tina Peters. And Boebert just recently stood up to the Trump administration to force the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files.
The president never promised that there would be retribution for me taking a stand and holding corrupt individuals accountable on the Epstein list.
I love how they just invalidate immediately the claim about Lauren Boebert that they just had. So what's actually going on here? Again, this was something when I was very young, I kind of wanted to sort of icebreaker, completely get rid of in front of my path in terms of and I think a lot of you will understand this feeling when I say it. When the media presents a certain narrative that seems too good to be true for their side. So Trump is an evil madman who's trying to dehydrate Colorado because they won't free a political prisoner. As it turns out, this is not Eastern Europe. This is just a financial scheme because this is America. We have like I said, a red flag that this project has been going on since the Kennedy administration. You'd think that something, because when Lauren Boebert says, "Oh, this provides drinking water to these people," if the project has been going on since this, so what is it supposed to provide water to 250,000 people and they just haven't gotten around to it? Like, what's going on is that Trump is not hitting us in the water; he's hitting us in the money. And given that Trump is a businessman, you should kind of expect this. So we have a very clear understanding of why Trump is doing this. He's doing this because the Colorado Democrat machine runs on these kind of going to nowhere projects, literally a pipeline to nowhere projects. Some people might contest that and say, "Oh yeah, it's like partially functional." Okay, great. But vetoing that doesn't mean that he believes that Colorado shouldn't have water. He just believes it shouldn't happen through this project. And I think Congresswoman Boebert, who again, we respect Lauren Boebert here, support her, of course. We have absolutely nothing but nice things to say about Lauren Boebert on this show. Actually, we've interviewed her before, went to the RNC with her. Nothing but nice things to say, honestly. But we have to separate the political aspect of this and say Lauren Boebert, I think, this is my opinion, she is welcome to come on the show and we could talk about it. But I believe she is pivoting towards the alternative right. And I don't mean that as the alt-right. I mean like a genuinely new thing. And we'll get into that and talk about that right now. So a little bit of levity. You guys know that a lot of us at the Colorado Hispanic Republicans love to have fun and love to do wonderful, unique things for this state party, which we often do completely thanklessly. No, we're joking. But we have a casino night coming up, and you can see all the information for that in the description. You guys are really not going to want to miss that casino night. It is January 23rd, if I am not mistaken. I will check that when we play the next video, and I will absolutely give you the right information about that. But it is going to be an awesome event, and we'd love to see you guys there for it. So, a lot of also families and young people to be attending, so it'll be a great vibe, and we will have a lot of fun playing roulette cards, whatever. And there is a rumor that one of the best food providers in the state will be providing tacos and fajitas. Just a rumor, I don't know if it's true, but I think it's true. So we welcome you all, guys, and we can't wait to see you there. So, what is happening with the new right? Like, I feel like there's like a new right, like a new right every other week. But this right wing is very young, typically 20s, 30s, 40s. It is very, I don't want to say angry because that's not really the dominant emotion. And frustrated is too narrow and little of a description. It's a genuine, passionate willpower to change the country. I don't think, because we've seen this epitomized in, like, at AmFest when everybody was throwing tomatoes at Nick Fuentes, when we'll get into that. But Nick Fuentes is kind of the personification of this new right. I'm not saying Lauren Boebert is associating herself with Nick Fuentes, although MTG did, and Lauren Boebert and MTG were associated for a time. I think the vibe is just kind of the same, whether people are flat out Groypers or whether they are, just like really hardcore MAGAists. A lot of this overlaps not because everyone's a secret fascist. It's because the vibe and the feeling of wanting to take back your country willfully this is what it looks like. This is what it acts like. This is what it feels like. And there's no other way around it. The left wing doesn't really produce this. It's like a hormone to a certain degree. It's just, this is not produced in this body. Maybe not the best analogy for the far right, for the far left to understand. But, this body just doesn't produce this hormone. The far right's body produces this energy and feeling. And I think, honestly, guys, and I am going to be very flat out, I am a supporter of Donald Trump 100% because I started in this fight a lot earlier than a lot of the alternative right, Groyper, etc., new nationalist kind of people. I started in this about 17 years ago. I only got really serious about it, beyond just theory and being a nerdy middle school and high schooler, rather, when I was 17, 18, literally with my old friend Charlie Kirk, just as the happenstance of geographic birth, and interest. So I think people that hadn't been through like the deep part of the Obama administration, who weren't politically aware during the George W. Bush administration and what the backlash towards Republican ideas was, post-Iraq war and all that, the progress we've made also on things like racialism, things that and like the Israel question, like things that the new right really, really care about, is unfathomable. I mean, it's literally a complete shift from everything being completely taboo, not even because people are suppressing it, but because there's just not many people who actually believe in it. I met very few genuine anti-Israel people until I was like 25 in, up to like a couple, X years ago, in the right-wing movements, like quite genuinely. Maybe in far-right movements for sure, but those were fringe opinions by far. And I'm not just talking about geopolitics. I mean economics, corporatism versus capitalism. So many issues. The new right is really nothing like the right that was 10 years ago. And I think people who are like the vibe of Lauren and Nick and so many other people, they're very frustrated with the pace at which we're taking back America. For me and a lot of the people who have kind of been in the fight for a lot longer in a professional sense, we see this pace as almost miraculous. We're very content with, I mean, we're not content with the pace. We want it to, go faster, but we're not willing to burn any bridges, to exclude, to, or at least to gatekeep at the very least, and like purity test. Exclude, absolutely. But not to purity spiral, etc. We want to utilize the materials that we've been given and that we have. And I think that you might call this a sort of syncretic nationalism, or even sort of a Hamiltonian aristocratic kind of nationalism versus like young MAGA or the Groypers. And I think that this right-wing strain is more likely to catch fire in our movement than the other two that I had mentioned, or any of the fringe movements, or even like traditional conservatism, like Mitch McConnell level conservatism, Mitt Romney level conservatism. I don't think that has any power with the young people anymore. But there is going to have to be a bridge between the older people with the resources and the wealth and the ability to make things happen, and the younger people who could get it done. Patronage is just not as much of a thing nowadays. And that's why I'm very happy to be able to announce several projects that we will be getting into in the coming weeks for a lot of these purposes. Stay tuned for those. But in relation to young people and the new right and the right-wing reaction to, or the new alt-right, whatever you want to call it, reaction to the current Trump administration, the prevailing feeling is disappointment. By far, it's disappointment. People are disappointed with Trump's present term. And in some ways, again, it's that these people just don't have the same pace. They don't have the same belief in the same pace that a lot of other people on the right and in the Republican Party do. And that's okay. I mean, they can be the vanguards blazing the trail. That's entirely fine. But usually the guy with the flamethrowers and the grenades is not the guy who is leading the charge, leading the charge, yes, but being the general behind the lines very specifically, who's making the strategy happen. I think that there is an immense lack of appreciation for Trump as the general, as the executive, with the situation he currently has, because I really think we need to stop blaming Biden and the Democrats for all of our weakness and problems. There was a certain Romanian figure that had said that one, only has the mosquitoes in the swamp that they live in. We've chosen to live in this state. We chose, and I say we, including older, younger generations, we've all collectively chose as a nation to not follow through on building this country, on making it faithful again, in making it the Republic of Western civilization again. And I'm not doing this kind of thing that we saw from certain people, some people at AmFest, certain people at other engagements, who are basically trying to say, oh, it's actually our right-wing fault. Like, we're just not good enough. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the left, as much as we don't want to admit this, is a part of the United States of America. And if we as Republicans are the only people left who care about America, by definition, we have to care about Democrats too. we have to care about liberals and socialists and the whole rest of them too. We have to consider their conversion to our American culture, to the proper traditional Republican with the small r American culture, where everybody feels like they're a part of this nation, a part of this system, this part of the republic. If we don't have that with the left, then we accept that we have two countries. We've become Palestine and Israel by our own choice. That's not a smart decision. We have to see the left and Democrats as part of ourselves. And you know what? You know why? You know I'm tying this together? Because the Groypers do. Because the youth MAGA does. Because young people are friends with so many young people these days. I was thinking about like all the people that I texted, and called for New Year's. I think it was over 50 people individually. Just because, we care about those levels of relationships. We don't want them to end. We don't want friendships to die. And so a lot of us young people in these generations have a very long and extended friends groups. And I think we need to utilize that. But we don't. We accept the borders. We accept the differences between us when we could be working together to change the country. So what if this person's a Republican? So what if this person's a Democrat? So long as they're working towards traditional Republican with the small r American unity. And I mean, there is a caveat. This is still a Republican show. The caveat to this is you got to vote Republican to that. And I'm not just being cheeky. If Democrat young people voted overwhelmingly, especially in purple states, this wouldn't work well in places like New York. That's where you got Mandami. But in purple and red states, if Democrats, especially young Democrats, flooded Republican candidates with votes, the Democrats would change to what they wanted very, very quickly. And that would be a very good strategic decision for them to make. But there's a stubbornness and pride that they won't let go of. And I think the only way to have people let go of stubbornness and pride is to show that you don't have it yourself. Or at the very least, you're trying your best to not have it. It's very, very difficult, I think, for a lot of right-wingers not to be proud. We're proud of America. We're proud of our heritage. We're proud of this and that. I think we need a different word for it. I think we need to say that we honor and want to perpetuate those things. That's a much more honest thing. We have to remember that we fight not because we hate what's in front of us, but because we love what's behind us. And I'm just not sure I really feel that from the new alt-right. I want to play you a clip from Nick Fuentes, because, again, he's kind of the poster boy for all of this. I really think unfairly, there are so many other right-wing figures besides Nick Fuentes. Nick is just the one who goes on podcasts and does outrageous things with celebrities. Like, if there were other right-wing, far-right podcasters and stuff who did that, you would hear those names, all the time. But you don't, So, what can I say? But this is the best approximation I think I could give you on these.
And now he says, if you're not on board with the Epstein cover-up, oh, I don't want your support. You're a weakling. Suck. You are fat. You are a joke. You are stupid. You are not funny. You are not as smart as you think you are. You are, and honestly, and if you watch my show, I've been very critical. I've never been this far. This just goes to show this entire thing has been a scam. When we look back on the history of populism in America, we are going to look back on the MAGA movement as the biggest scam in American history. And the liberals were right. The MAGA supporters were had. They were. When we look back in history, we will see Trump as a scam artist who served as a vehicle for this rather than the other way around. We were not the vehicle for Trump. Trump was the vehicle for all of us.
So I think that you guys kind of see, it's like, it's not, again, it's not really a hate or an anger. It's the resources directed to Trump could have been directed towards something to actually take back the country. So this is bad. And we hate this. Kind of, that's the general kind of vibe. But I think he kind of gave up the game a little bit at the end when he said that we're not the vehicle for Trump, Trump's the vehicle for us. I don't want to call it main character syndrome because that's not really what it is, but it's something akin to that, of sort of thinking, well, our generation is just supposed to be the one to make everything better because we have the right ideas. Yeah, it doesn't matter how right you are. It's it's like the old, not old, but the line from Law Abiding Citizen, who says, it's not what you know, it's what you could prove in court. Well, it's not what you know, it's what you could achieve politically. And I think that the general disdain for being in the system is what has crippled the youth and the far right completely. They just can't be normal for 5 seconds and attend a couple of XCOM meetings and go to their state capital like once every while and like make connections with people that and work with people that they don't like very explicitly. The belief in politics that your enemy today is your friend tomorrow and vice versa is not anywhere with these people. And I agree. I do not want political Byzantine politics. I want to be able to make friends in politics, brothers and sisters, and trust them completely. We should have that. But the idea that that needs to be everybody is unrealistic, sets up terrible expectations, and drives young right-wing men out of the general MAGA and conservative movements. We need to be less puritanical. This is why this is actually true. I wish I had a source for this right now, but if I find one, I'll put it in the description. But I've been seeing multiple statements that this generation is more Catholic and Orthodox, an apostolic level of Christian than any other generation in American history. That Protestant church attendance is now lower than the apostolic church attendance for the first time in American history. And I think that when you look at a lot of these guys in the new and the far, the new far right, whatever you want to call it, a lot of them are Catholic and Orthodox. But a lot of the young MAGA, or a lot of the traditional conservatives, they typically come from Protestant churches. And so I think that this religious division is something that the new right really picks up on. And I think that's one of the reasons for the divisions that goes beyond just ideological difference, or this person doesn't like that person and there's drama here and there. I hate that explanation. That drama is not the reason that people hate each other politically. That the hatred politically is what precedes the drama. The drama is a result of people not liking each other based on the fact that some people are just out to grift. That is genuinely frustrating to people trying to change the country. So that's why, for example, you saw a feud between Fuentes and Candace Owens. Because Fuentes, for all he is not a grifter. I could say that for certain. And not just because me and him both grew up in Chicago too. I never met him. Me, Charlie, everybody else, we went ours, we were definitely not in the, I'll put it this way, and I don't mean this as offensive to Nick. Again, if Nick wants to come on our show, he wouldn't because of a lot of reasons. But if Nick Fuentes ever wanted to come on the show, I wanted to preference this to say, I don't mean no disrespect, but when he was entering the movement, all of us were looking at the next steps to go on to bigger and better things. So me and his path just never crossed, the same way that my path and Charlie Kirk's path were very much intertwined. So I apologize to my audience that I never sought out Nick Fuentes. I can't give you every insider perspective. But if you guys want more insider perspectives, you definitely are going to want to subscribe to the channel and and everything like that, because our particular brand of we want to get the truth, me and Hugo, it typically leads to us knowing things in the state of Colorado that nobody else knows for a long time, including what I would also, one of my favorites is our interviews with Adam Dorito. A lot of just, truth nuggets in there about the state and how it works, how it really works. And that's just always a lot of fun. I think, honestly, though, a lot of that insider information is just not known to people on the Groyper alt-right kind of space. And I think it should. I think if these guys really want to prove themselves, they should prove themselves in the honest political space. Go up against honest political Democrats and see how you do. You might do much better than you think. And that's definitely the advice I would give. And that's the advice I would give to anyone who's worried about this trend. It's just give these guys a chance to actually prove themselves. Give the alt far right, Groyper, whatever you want to call them, give them a chance to prove themselves. A lot of them will mellow out when they actually have some amount of money, power, security, whatever they want. Like the thirst for all that is not infinite in these people. I think there's a very horrible perspective. Oh, if I give you something now, you're going to be dependent and you're going to always want something. I don't think that's the case at all. I think that just a hand being offered and a bridge being built, I don't think that's called handouts. I don't think that's called dependence. I think that's called families supporting each other. I think it's called handouts and all that when it's Somalians and you're giving literally $9 billion to, again, because this is what freaks everybody out. Somalia's GDP is $12 billion. We gave them 3/4 of their home country's GDP. The Gen Z of America aren't asking for that much. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like instead of importing all these Somalians and giving them billions of dollars, you could have just given any amount of these resources to American Gen Zers and millennials. They would have been able to live and do all these things. Yeah. But we didn't, and because we didn't, we have things that are overlooked, like the fact that my ticker says that we have Adam Dorito on the show when we do not. I wish that'd be really awesome, because again, it's like I didn't know where Hugo was right at this point. So if we had Adam Dorito just on speed dial, that'd be great. But Adam is running for Congress. You guys can see the interviews we've had with him in the description. In fact, I'm probably going to be lazy and just put the last interview, because that interview is a must-see, one of his first as a congressional candidate. In fact, we have had a lot of first interviews. Mark Baisley, Greg Lopez, we interviewed these guys in some of the first weeks they announced. So you guys really do want to subscribe and never miss a show. We have the inside track, guys, and we want to give it straight to you, and we always appreciate your support for it. But moving along, because we have to, I want to tie this together with Colorado. Why me here in Colorado? Why am I saying, what authority am I on the new far right, whatever you want to call it, all that stuff? Nationalist. I'm going to call it just nationalist movement. I'm going to tie it all together, nationalist movement. We're going to go with that. Why is Colorado the new home of the nationalist movement? I'm going to say it again. Why is Colorado the home of the new nationalist movement? Because it is. And if you don't know that it is, you want to stay tuned, because this is more of that insider track I'm talking about. Young people in Colorado have come from pretty much everywhere in the United States. All 50 states, straight up. Alaska, California, Washington, Illinois, Kentucky, Florida. Stop me, local Coloradans, when you haven't heard somebody. Maybe West Virginia is too far, but, Virginia, New York, Massachusetts, Texas, definitely. New Mexico, absolutely. All of these states, all of these people come to Colorado. All of these people are usually coming to Colorado because Colorado is kind of purplish. It's kind of like, just a, relaxed and groovy state, at least it used to be. And people genuinely feel a sense of peace here because of that access of development. There's civilization here that there might not be in a state like Wyoming or such. Much love to everyone in Wyoming. We appreciate you, especially your local Republican Party. Thank you. But we can agree there's not that much development in Wyoming compared to the Front Range of Colorado, or even up in the mountains. There's plenty of places in the mountains that are very well developed. Very much civilization. It produces a love for this place. I love Colorado. I genuinely love Colorado. I genuinely don't want to live anywhere else. And I'm someone who's very deeply connected to my hometown of Chicago, my home state of Illinois. Just like my father was deeply connected to his home country of Mexico. Just like my mother, shout out mom. Just like my mother was proud of her Polish and German heritage. All of us, imagine all of that synergy, all that energy, now in one state. Imagine it's full of young people. And the people who own and run this state want to keep it under lock and key for their own interests and who want to turn the state into a tourist trap and would really rather y'all young people just take a hike if you don't have any money, frankly. That is not what Colorado is. Colorado is mines and ranches, and it is nature, it is food, delicious food that is literally ranched and grown right here. It's oil and gas that should be refined here and pumped through our gas stations. But they would rather turn it, and I mean that to the Democrats, would rather turn it into a tourist trap. And the Republicans, who own land and power in this state, don't want to see Republicans win. These are conservative-minded people. They want Republicans to win in their areas. They want to be exempt from all the Democrat garbage that gets thrown down the pipe. And they're not willing to let a piece of their pie get bitten out of for the sake of all of us. You know, it reminds me of the old politician Huey Long from Louisiana, who used to say, is like, you got to take some of that grub that you ain't got no business with. Because it's true. I mean, we all agree that we should make as much as possible. That is something that I absolutely believe in. I believe in the free market. I believe that economic liberalism, a la the Salamanca school, the Chicago school, with the proper application of a state that actually cares about their people, I think that balance is very much beautiful and exemplified very well by the Trump administration. But we don't have that in Colorado. We have a system that is run by money, despite the fact that we should be much more naturally run, much more run on our own soil, the gas and oil that we drill, the food and ranching that we do, etc. We could be self-sufficient here in Colorado. And we're openly being made not to be. This is one reason why, again, insider track, we're going to break through everything right here. The wolves. Why are wolves being introduced into Colorado? The real reason is to destroy the ranch lands. So that we can't grow here. We have to import from places like Brazil, which have lower quality, less testing, and which gives money to people who are not our local ranchers. This has to be broken apart, folks, if young people want to succeed. Because how are young people supposed to become butchers and oil and gas people? How are they supposed to get jobs in the civic domains of the cities that have to facilitate all of this development and commerce? And this is just the economics that is currently, this is just the economic level we currently have. I'm not even talking about, development of nuclear technology, of civil defense technology, of more involving aerospace technology. We could be advancing so much more heavily in this state because of the proximity of the military, especially here in Colorado Springs. We could literally be the center of the center here. And all it would require is for those with the wealth and power to give the young and active a chance to do something about it. That's how things had always worked in the past. That's what our enemies strove to break straight up and first. That's why they broke up the family. That's why they broke up the extended society, so that people wouldn't be able to give each other money, resources, connections, and everything they needed when they needed it to make a play, to make a move to change their society. If we don't have that, then we really don't deserve to save the country. Because we're basically telling our young people, we're perfectly okay if you die. We're perfectly okay if you don't succeed. We're perfectly okay abandoning this progeny and importing foreigners who we don't have to remind ourselves that we look like. That's a sad existence, and we have to reject it in all of its forms. And no one rejects it harder than the young right-wing nationalists. So imagine all that mindset. Imagine all that mindset. Going back to that, you ain't got no business with that growth. We all agree that we want people to make as much money as possible. That's what we're striving for. But you know what's kind of disgusting? In the analogy of food, you make all this food. when you sit down at a table and you deliberately eat all the food in front of people that you are deliberately keeping that food from. That is not capitalism. That is a Marxist caricature of what capitalism is, and we're doing it. That's sick. A great friend and ally of the show, great person, most based legislator, Ken DeGraff, shout out Ken. He once reminded all of us that feudalism is a Marxist term, that capitalism is a Marxist term. We're using our enemy's language in order to describe ourselves. And so no wonder we're becoming the worst of what our enemy has described ourselves as. It's not fair to be that to all those people who believe in what we believe in. And that's kind of the end of that part of the fireside rant, honestly, because I really would like to leave it with that thought. Let's deserve to save our country, folks. Let's go that distance. Let's not just wait on the sidelines. And also, let's go with what is obviously, maybe I'm presumptuous in saying this, but what is obviously the will of God. Because the will of God is not for us to kill our children and to starve ourselves and to work ourselves to death and to never progress and to work backwards economically and to give everything to those who aren't our progeny. It's not what God wants, certainly. Not for us, not for any other people. And you know what God probably doesn't want? I feel pretty confident in saying this. I don't think God wants war. I remember this line in The Young Pope, which said that it's like, the children write many things. They like many things. But I've never heard a child say that what they like is war. Or, and I will put the quote in the description. It was a mother who said this, is I dream of giving birth to a child one day who asked me, Mother, what was war? And so I think that a big departure for the syncretic, sort of more Hamiltonian, aristocratic, more active nationalists versus the Groypers, alt-right, this sort of general theme. I think they want to do things. I think they want to fulfill the principles that they actually claim to believe in. I think they want to show it in an extremely provable way. And I think you see this with a deep divide in foreign policy. Because if you listen to the pundits in the media, and if you listen to the right-wing spaces, you would get the impression that the right-wing Republicans are just ready to throw open the doors of America to BRICS, to China and Russia, or maybe to sacrifice Europe to Russia in order to somehow take a shot at China somehow. They're willing to open the doors to India and Indian money and Indian scams, etc. Indians taking over our civic departments. They're open to that. They're open to Somalians taking money fraudulently. They're open to, I'm going to say, we are Hispanic Patriot podcast, but we admit that Hispanic illegal immigration has facilitated a lot of the ill-gotten wealth of the sort of neo-upper class, if you will. We Hispanics don't want to be slaves of the neo-upper class, as it turns out, by the way. That's one of the reasons we established Hispanic Patriot podcast, to deliver that message of outright rebellion, of outright peaceful revolution. Because every Hispanic country was born of revolution. America was too. That makes every American country, except for Canada, for obvious reasons. But we know the cost. We all have been willing to pay the cost, which is why I think Hispanics are part of the people leading the charge against the globalist agenda, against the forces that keep America down. I mean, again, the Groypers are led by a guy named Nick Fuentes, for goodness sake. It's not exactly subtle, as Nick himself described it, like the Fourth Reich of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Like it's just a very strange thing that we can just put this to a side for a second, back to like a fireside vibe. Can we kind of laugh at the fact that the new far right neo-Nazi crazy people, whatever, are all Hispanics and Indians and black people, and there's a couple of white guys. There's a lot of Jewish guys. There's just Jewish girls, white girls, Hispanic girls. Like it's just like all over the place. There's no barrier to being this anymore, and I think that it's just confusing the heck out of people. And I think that camouflage aspect is actually what's partially driving some of the interest into the far right space. So I tell people it's really not that big a deal. It's really not that deep, bro. People just like things and they think things are funny and they notice the benefits of certain beliefs and groups together. And that's why I think you're seeing a surge of nationalism in Europe and in Hispanic America. You're seeing this in Chile, where a hardcore right-wing nationalist literally scared the we're not going to blaspheme on the show, out of the left because he's literally the son of a guy who was in the Nazi party. Again, how that relates to him being president of Chile, a country with a non-sub-zero amount of non-white Native American ancestry. I don't know. But that's what we're saying. And I'm very close friends with Javier Milei, who's a Jew, who's converted to Judaism. It's just silly that we're obsessed with this. Especially, and this is the segue, when communism still exists on our continent. Communism still exists on our continent, and the left wing is worried about a Jewish guy in Argentina. We have in Venezuela people and government people in the military willing to get missiles from Russia to shoot at us. This is a neo-Cuban Missile Crisis, folks. And everyone's just acting like it isn't happening. People don't care. Imagine if people had, and we have certain audience members who are old enough to remember this, shout out to all of you, the Cuban Missile Crisis when you were kids. Wasn't everyone obsessed with that? Nobody could. Who is even talking publicly every day about Venezuela? Nobody. And yet, missiles are longer range and better than ever now. Russia supplying missiles to Venezuela is an actual big problem. So let's talk about that for a second as we discuss foreign policy.
Another alleged drug boat in the killing 2 people. U.S. Southern Command posted this video of the attack on social media. It marks the 30th strike on suspected drug vessels in the region since September, killing at least 107 people. Before a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, President Trump confirmed the first known U.S. land strike inside Venezuela.
There was a major explosion in the dock area where they load the boats up with drugs.
Is it me or does Netanyahu look like really spent?
The boats and now we hit the area.
CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us now from West Palm Beach, Florida. Ed, what do we know about the strike?
Not much, Lindsay. The president saying that this happened, and he had actually first said this in a radio interview.
That's kind of what I expected. The news now wasting everybody's time. It's like, we don't know, but we're going to keep talking about it. So yeah, you know what we never did in the Cuban Missile Crisis, as far as I remember, directly striking Cuban soil, like from the air. So this is literally this is something legitimately bothersome for a lot of us in the young generation, that things just happen like that are much more historically important than we might realize or acknowledge. And people just act like it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal that the economy is destroyed. It's not a big deal that nobody can survive on just one income anymore. It's not a big deal. Lives aren't being destroyed. It's like genuinely maddening. So that's something that, in terms of this neo-Cuban Missile Crisis that we're dealing with, is the nationalist new right talking about that? They usually, if they talk about any foreign entanglements, this is something that I'm very personally peeved about. Every foreign entanglement to one of the Groyper new right kind of people is something Jewish influenced and stupid and a waste of money inherently. And I just think that's kind of rather silly. The idea that every military action we could possibly take is a bad idea is an ideological opinion. It is not a strategic or military opinion. That's just the facts. You're just the opposite of the dictator who demands victory at any cost. You're just demanding peace at any cost. That's just appeasement, and that's not a right-wing nationalist thing at all. The right-wing nationalists were not the ones appeasing in World War II. They were the ones taking land and stuff. So if we're applying that, it's kind of an idea. It's like, I'm sure there's some Hoi 4 or like some Hearts of Iron players who might get a kick out of this, of like, imagine if America was a fascist country during World War II and invaded Germany, and like they did the entire World War II the way it was, not because of freedom and democracy, but just because they wanted an empire. They're like, yeah, everyone's weak, gobble up. History would have been the exact same. Like, ideology just doesn't change geopolitics or military stuff very much. It's mostly geography and military strength and doctrine and stuff like that determine wars. Russia and Germany probably would have gone to war in the 1940s if the roles were reversed and Russia was a fascist state and Germany was a communist state. Ideology just doesn't really matter that much in terms of geopolitical fights. Hard truth, but it is what it is. So why is this happening? Let's cap off Venezuela. Why is this happening right now? For kind of a bad reason, and I wanted to introduce my audience to this gentleman's open source intel expert and Newsmax contributor, Ryan Macbeth. So take it away, Ryan.
It looks like Venezuela recently detained some U.S. citizens, at least according to the New York Times. Okay, so we're doing this. What kind of blows my mind here is that Maduro has a chance to leave Venezuela and spend the rest of his life in Russia playing Fortnite with Assad. And for some reason, he's choosing to stay. There is no outcome here where Maduro stays in power. Zero. None. President Trump can't back his naval forces out of the Caribbean or else he'll look weak in front of China and Russia. They are staying until Maduro goes. And what blows my mind here is that taking hostages doesn't make Venezuela's position better, it makes it weaker. Operation Urgent Fury back in 1983 resulted in the invasion and occupation of the Caribbean island of Grenada. Ostensibly, it was done to rescue some medical students on the island. But in reality, the Cubans were helped building an airport that could theoretically hold Soviet aircraft.
Just like the Russians
whether you
are
like
doing
President
today in
Trump or not, he does seem to be decisive when decisions are called for. Let's look at Operation Midnight Hammer, which took out Iranian nuclear sites, and more recently attacking targets in Nigeria to fight ISIS. So in Maduro's case, this actually makes the situation worse, not better, and more likely for the United States to intervene militarily. Dude, just go play Fortnite with Assad.
I mean, who wouldn't want to play Fortnite with Assad, right? Like, so back a little bit of an inside joke. We actually made, if you guys saw our Tropico series, we were playing video games. We might go back to that. I don't know how we're going to do that, but we're going to talk to some people and see if that would be a good idea marketing-wise. We actually had made an episode where we played as Bashar al-Assad, exiled, taking over Kamala Harris's place on her island, tearing down her chocolate factories, whatever. We didn't upload it because we thought it was a little offensive. But if you guys, request it, we will do that. So just a heads up. But yeah, go play Fortnite with Assad, Maduro. But it's true. Like, that's why I call it the Neo-Cuban Missile Crisis. Is that the U.S. Navy's not going to leave. Naval operations are very large scale, very long term. So unless Venezuela plans to do this past its capacity to do this, we have to see the fall of communism in Venezuela. And if we see the fall of communism in Venezuela, we pray to God we see it in Cuba, and then Nicaragua's won't stand a chance. Then we'll have our continent again. By God, we'll have our continent again. We don't have it right now. The Monroe Doctrine is not in effect, essentially. And the Trump administration is making sure it is. Including in West Africa, which actually West Africa plays a huge part navally in American history. In fact, American pirates used to travel across to West Africa and into the Red Sea as early as the 1700s. Isn't that crazy? American colonist pirates would literally sail all the way to the Red Sea. It was called the Pirate Round. Isn't that amazing? Shout out to the channel Golden Gunpowder, because they're an awesome pirate channel. Another thing, is like esoteric right-wing guys like myself and people like Sticks and people like that. Yeah, we like pirates. I don't know why. Especially since as a Spanish-descended person, like, we should hate them universally, because piracy in the Caribbean was like an actual horrible thing. That like really hurt a lot of Hispanic people. Anyways, I won't get into that right now. the huge civilizational, religious, ethnic fight that was going on in Pirates of the Caribbean. In the real Pirates of the Caribbean, like the Golden Age of Pirates in the 1600s. Massive story. We might do a series on that or something. We might do something fun with that. Maybe we'll play a pirate game. Who knows? But I want to close out on this by talking about how this relates to what we were talking about before with the Groypers and the New Nationalists. This persistent idea that any military action is inherently bad and that Trump is an inherently bad president for doing anything with the U.S. military at all. I think that's just a faulty perspective. And I really support Trump's foreign policy, except in one regard. Me personally. This is not the Hispanic Patriot podcast opinion. I personally very much disagree with our policy on Ukraine. And the reason for that is because of my right-wing nationalist tendencies. I am offended at the idea that Americans are being killed by the Russian government, by Chinese soldiers, by North Koreans. These are the people that Russia is employing to fight this war. And while my instincts originally was to ignore, maybe not ignore, because I've been involved in this one way or another since 2014, to sort of say, okay, well, that's happening over there. Okay. The more Americans chose to get involved in Ukraine, the more I started to care. The more I started to sort of break with other people. Not many. There was actually a lot of right-wing support for Ukraine. If the country support is like 60% whatever for Ukraine, 65% whatever, guarantee, at least half of that is right-wing and Republican support. And there's arguments of like, well, money laundering or this and that. It's like, for me, the Polish prime minister said this a couple of weeks ago. I'd rather pay in money now than blood later. And right now I see Americans paying in blood. And I wanted to share with you one such volunteer who is very close to us in Colorado for obvious reasons.
I'm from America, lived in Colorado for 18 years, but now I call Ukraine my home. I originally enlisted to be simply a combat medic, and now I've done much more than simply that. I believe in the future I'll be pursuing drones, but honest to God, I'm here to do whatever is needed.
And looking back to before you came here, I mean, how did that decision come about?
I was one of the few people who anticipated that Russia would invade Ukraine before the full-scale invasion. As a result, knowing or being rather convinced that this would be the case, I started to question what I would do in response. Initially, I was a volunteer, simply making supply trips to and from Ukraine, and that solidified my desire to do more.
So you came out here, and through those volunteering stints, you began to understand more about the country and the landscape.
My very first time in Ukraine was March 6, 2022. And of course, during that time, that was perhaps the largest humanitarian crisis since World War II, where so many women and children were fleeing Ukraine for the safety of Europe and other countries. And so experiencing that, or being a witness to that, had a profound effect on who I am today.
So meeting people like that really kind of changed my perspective when it became human. We often have ideological opinions, but I think we have to remember that we're fighting for humanity. We're fighting for Western civilization, because right now we are in a multipolar world. That's something we have to accept. We live in a world where there's a civilization over there and the civilization here, and we're not together. We're separate. We're not supporting each other. We can't. And some Americans want to pretend that's not the case and say, no, we can still be friends with Russia. And I do have to say that Donald Trump's one of those people. I think Donald Trump's a very loving person that doesn't want to admit how bad the world has become in some ways. I think that's most of his generation. I don't even think that's just unique to Trump. But us young people know how bad it is. And that's why we have to band together. We absolutely have to. So if you know young people, you need to get with them. You need to band together. Say, hey, what's our skills? Let's make some money. Let's make things happen in our local communities. Because that's what I've decided to do. I am not going to complain, or say, well, Trump is against Ukraine and because of him, my friends could be in danger. But I could do that. I absolutely could do that. What would that do? Instead, what I choose to do is be an example for those who don't agree so that they might want to agree. And I use my difference of opinion in order to bring left-wing people into our understanding of right-wing nationalism. To say, well, you can understand why the Ukrainians love their people. You know, Ukraine, now that Russia has taken Russian land from them, or I should say areas of Russian-speaking land that they claim is Russian, Ukraine is like 97, 99% Ukrainian now. It's basically an ethno-state. And it was not before, when it had Crimea and Donbass. And Russia is now more multi-ethnic than it was previously. Is Russia going to be a country in the future? When people say, is America going to be a country in the future? Because we have all of this selling off our heritage. Because we're, according to Nick Fuentes and these people, because we're not an ethno-state, we won't survive. Well, then how is Russia going to survive? Because it's never going to be an ethno-state, ever. Well, Ukraine is. Even if Ukraine lost all the land that Russia is claiming right now, Ukraine would be more Ukrainian than it was in 2014. That's a nationalist project of self-defense and determination. That's the thing a left-winger could say, wow, I kind of get these right-wing values now, yeah. Oh yeah, if Ukrainians adopted my left-wing values, they'd be cooked. Yeah, I get that now. I think that's an amazing opportunity. And that's an opportunity that I don't want to pass up, especially when, again, I have a proud Polish mother. We know, and in Germans too. And the Germans, what the Russians did to them is often not cared about enough because they were the losers of World War II. Well, I'm sorry, just because you lose a war doesn't mean you're going to have however much of your population traumatized and brutalized and treated like garbage. Defeat in a Christian world is not meant to be that, and Russia was not a Christian country at the time. It still isn't in so many ways. Its people might want to be, and yet it might be a Muslim country by 2050 under current trends. And that's a tragedy for a beautiful culture. That was a Slavo-Varangian culture. Norse and Slavic people working together to build a mighty country to force back the Mongols and the tribes away from Europe. The martyr emperor Nickolas II, whose name I share and who I honor very much, went to war with Japan. We all wonder, the Russo-Japanese War, why'd they do that? Because Nickolas II believed that Asia would eventually rise up against Europe and crush it with numbers and technology that it developed as a result of westernization. It was called the Peril of Asia, generously. Nickolas II, I think, would be rolling in his grave today to see North Korean and Chinese soldiers at the borders of Europe. And I think that's a perspective from a right-wing Christian perspective. Why do we want barbarian communists and mercenaries from our arch enemy to be at the doorstep of where our ancestors came from? Our ancestors, for the most part, came from Europe. Some of them came from here, in Hispanic America. So much native blood, and we'll talk about that. It should be said that an Ojibwe volunteer, a Native American, was killed fighting for Ukraine, and he was deeply honored. Because in Ukraine, they understand, it's like, hey, they talk about our population going down, but you Native Americans, you understand this better than most. As a person of native descent, I would like Ukrainians to hold their native lands. I don't think Russians are indigenous to the lands they're trying to take over, and I think that means that the land will reject them. And I think there's a reason, as a native person, that I believe that Europeans have not been rejected from America. Because we are meant to be together. Red, white, and blue. I don't think Russia has that mentality with the people they're trying to conquer. And so I don't think they'll win. And I always want to back winners. I think Donald Trump's a winner. So even though I disagree with him on this policy, I still want to be with him because he's an American nationalist. I still want to be for Donald Trump because he believes in America, and so do I. And I will never not believe in America. We are always trying to do the right thing. And that's why, in the end, our republic will remain the shining city on the hill and will remain the greatest country in the world. It took me a long time to understand why that's the case and how that's not just an empty slogan. And it's our job as young men to teach that to other young men and young women to young women, everyone to everybody. Teach people to honor who they are so that they never feel that it's cheap, so that they never feel that they want to sell it out. Let them have value in themselves. And I think if we do that, we'll see that synthesis. We'll see the right wing heal. We'll see the Republican Party be the vehicle it's meant to be again. And I think this year will be the year of miracles for that. Well, guys, that is it. That is it for the Fireside Chat today. That is it for Flying Solo. Give a prayer that Hugo is found. We will be issuing pictures on milk cartons very shortly here. But all jokes aside, guys, we really appreciate you sticking with us for all these years. We started, I came on the scene around December of, I think, 2 years ago, however long it's been. And gosh, the time has just flown by. And I've grown to appreciate so many of you. I've met so many of you, and I just really appreciate all that you guys do for us. Thank you very much, everybody. That is it from the Hispanic Patriot podcast. Make sure to leave a like and comment what your favorite part of the show was. Did you like this Fireside Chat format? Did you like things a little bit more off the cuff? Did you want me to insult people more? Did you want me to, in fact, call? You know what? I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna get kicked off of YouTube. So, for any of you who would like, please let us know what you would like to see in the future as well, so that we can always give you guys the kind of thing you're looking for. Besides that, we'll always give you the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help us God. God bless you guys. I hope you have a very prosperous new year, prospero año, and God bless America.